We are jumping straight into the deep end today. No casual banter. We have a very specific mission for this deep dive.
Right, highly specific. We are looking at tectonic shifts.
Exactly. We are taking the massive, really unprecedented geostrategic developments happening right now between India and Japan, and we are going to convert them into a high-retention visual memory system.
Because if you are analyzing geostrategy for a living or, preparing for a high-stakes exam, you don't just need a list of treaties. You need the conceptual clarity to recall it under pressure.
Yeah, you need the underlying mechanics. So for the listener, I want you to visualize pulling up a geopolitical briefing room dashboard on your screen right now.
I love that framing. Clean, high contrast, policy, think tank aesthetic.
Exactly. And right in the center of that dashboard, display the core interconnection map. It flows in one direction, geopolitics, which drives the economy, which dictates security, which ultimately determines the domestic impact.
That is your analytical lens for today. Geopolitics to economy to security to domestic. Every single treaty we discuss today maps onto that exact chain.
Right. And to really grasp this, we have to look at the timeline. Because, well, it didn't always operate on that full spectrum. Post-World War II, Japan was rigidly pacifist.
Completely. I mean, it was hardwired into Article 9 of their constitution. They legally renounced war as a sovereign right.
Yeah, they basically decided to become an economic superpower while operating as a strategic protectorate of the U.S.
Right. The U.S. held the security umbrella, and Japan built the world's third largest economy. And India's relationship with Japan reflected that. It was polite, economically beneficial, but
no hard power alliance.
exactly. Not until the timeline starts compressing. You get the global partnership in 2000, and then the strategic and global partnership in 2006.
But that incremental stuff is out the window now. We are on a radically accelerated timeline. And there are 3 trigger events you need to lock into your dashboard right now.
The catalysts.
Right. First, Japan's revolutionary national security strategy in December 2022. Second, PM Kishida's March 2023 new free and open Indo-Pacific policy visit to India. And third, the culminating event, the 15th India-Japan Annual Summit on August 29th and 30th, 2025.
Those are the pillars. The 2022 NSS, the 2023 FOIP, and the 2025 summit.
Okay, let's unpack this framework. Let's start with the root causes. Why is Japan abandoning decades of pacifism?
Well, you have to look at the external threats. It's not happening in a vacuum. There's a convergence of 4 distinct factors shattering their security environment. First, and obviously the rise of China and its blatant military assertion.
And we aren't just talking abstract competition here, right?
No, absolutely not. Direct territorial disputes in the East China Sea. And then, threat number 2, you have deepening military bonds between China and Russia right in Northeast Asia.
Which means joint bomber flights, naval patrols.
Pressuring Japanese airspace constantly. And then threat number 3 is North Korea's growing ballistic missile capabilities.
Oh, wow, yeah. They've literally fired missiles over Japanese islands.
Right. When air raid sirens are going off in your cities, theoretical pacifism is a very tough sell to voters. And the fourth threat is this lingering historical fear of a U.S. security withdrawal, which really spiked during the Trump administration.
So if you're Japan, the external environment is hostile, and the guy with the umbrella might leave. But there's an internal factor, too, isn't there?
Totally. Japanese conservatives are pushing to become what they call a normal power. They feel they've paid their penance for World War II, and now it's time to actually contribute to a regional order.
Okay, so let's map out the stakeholders here. Visualize a stakeholder diagram. We have India and Japan, but let's look at the G4 affinity.
Right, the G4, India, Japan, Germany, and Brazil.
They are actively supporting each other's bids for a permanent UNSC seat, which shows they both want to be independent poles in a multipolar world.
But navigating that requires a massive balancing act, especially regarding the China factor. And this is where the paradox comes in.
The trade paradox. Let's pull up a comparison table on our visual dashboard. Trade data on one side, security threats on the other.
The numbers are staggering. China is Japan's biggest trading partner. We are talking $293 billion.
And for India, it's the same story. Despite Galwan, despite everything, China is India's largest trading partner, $139 billion in the 2024-2025 period.
Wait, let me push back on this because it sounds completely contradictory. How do both nations manage to aggressively counter China's territorial expansion while simultaneously relying on them for hundreds of billions in trade?
It's the ultimate tightrope walk.
How does this dual-track strategy work in practice? Are they just funding their own biggest threat?
I mean, it looks like that, but you have to understand the distinction between decoupling and de-risking. Decoupling is a complete severing of ties, which would ruin both economies.
Right, you can't just delete $293 billion of trade overnight.
Exactly. So they opt for de-risking. You still buy basic consumer goods, but you absolutely refuse to let them control critical infrastructure. For instance, India completely boycotted China's Belt and Road Initiative, the BRI.
And Japan refused to join the China-led Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, the AIIB. Precisely. They won't cede control of the geopolitical architecture.
Okay, visual director for the listener right now. When we map this out, pull up a layered geopolitical map showing trade routes versus territorial disputes. And here is a crucial, non-negotiable rule for this visual framework.
Very important point here.
Whenever we reference Galwan, Ladakh, Arunachal Pradesh, or any boundary issues, you must explicitly visualize India's official map representation only. We completely reject any distorted or unofficial boundaries. The map defined by the government of India is the absolute baseline.
Absolutely essential for your answer writing and your conceptual clarity.
Okay, so we have this massive trade relationship built on a geopolitical fault line. Let's move to the second node of our framework, the economic architecture.
Right. How do you actually practice de-risking?
Exactly. I want the listener to bring up a new visual, a supply chain and infrastructure diagram. We're looking at the Special Economic Partnership. India is currently the #1 recipient of Japanese Official Development Assistance, or ODA.
Through JICA, the Japan International Cooperation Agency. And this isn't just small aid grants, this is nation-building infrastructure.
So lock in a memory anchor right here. Every time you think of Indo-Japan economics, visualize a bullet train. It represents high-speed economic integration.
It's the perfect symbol. The Ahmedabad-Mumbai bullet train is the flagship, but there's also the dedicated freight corridor, the Delhi-Mumbai Industrial Corridor,
The Bengaluru-Chennai high-speed railway, and of course the Delhi Metro, which fundamentally changed urban mobility in India.
all backed by Japan. And that economic pledge scales up regionally. In March 2023, PM Kishida made the FOIP economic pledge. He promised to invest $75 billion across the Indo-Pacific by 2030.
$75 billion. What's the strategic goal of that cash?
He called it multi-layered connectivity.
Which basically means supply chains that don't all run through Beijing, right?
Exactly. You can't rely on one single country. And that brings us to the crucial updates from the August 2025 summit.
Right. They launched a massive new initiative for resilient supply chains, and they targeted 3 extremely specific sectors.
Semiconductors, pharmaceuticals, and critical minerals.
Because if you control critical minerals and semiconductors, you control the 21st century. It's a direct counter to economic coercion.
And you have to connect this to India's domestic development. Look at the Act East Forum, established in 2017. Japan is pouring infrastructure investment into India's northeastern region.
Because the Northeast is the physical land bridge to Southeast Asia, it bypasses vulnerable maritime choke points.
Exactly. The geopolitics is directly driving domestic economic impact.
Okay, let's transition to the third node, institutional dimensions and maritime security. Because here's where it gets really interesting.
It does. You can't have a free and open Indo-Pacific if you can't secure the sea lanes. Economic integration demands military frameworks.
So let's dictate some core facts for the dashboard. First, the ACSA, the Acquisition and Cross-Servicing Agreement, signed in 2020.
It's a logistics game changer. It allows Indian and Japanese naval ships to refuel and resupply at each other's bases. Japan is only the 6th country India signed this with.
After the US, France, Singapore, South Korea, and Australia. But in August 2025, they enhanced the ACSA specifically for extended Indo-Pacific operations.
Which means they are preparing for long-range sustained deployments together.
And to operate together, you need intelligence. Let's talk maritime domain awareness, or MDA.
Vital for tracking dark shipping.
Right.
India has 2 dedicated MDA centers located in Gurugram, Haryana.
And at the 2025 summit, they linked those up with Japan, collaborating with the Information Fusion Center for the Indian Ocean region and the IPMDA.
They're basically merging their radar pictures.
Right. So listener, visualize an escalation ladder on your screen. At the base, we have bilateral military exercises.
You have Dharma Guardian for the Army and GMEX for the Navy.
Then we move up the ladder to multilateral exercises, the Malabar exercise at the Quad and the massive Milan naval exercise.
Now, I want you to pull up an institutional relationship map. Connect these 4 nodes with arrows: the Quad, the Act East Forum, Japan's FOIP, and India's Indo-Pacific Oceans Initiative, the IPOI.
In 2025, we saw a total synergy between India's IPOI and Japan's FOIP. They are locking the institutional architecture together.
Which leads us to the most consequential part of this briefing, Japan's national security strategy, the rise of a new Japan.
The hard power shift. Let's break down the December 2022 NSS.
It derived an entirely new defense strategy and defense buildup program, and the language was shocking. They officially labeled China their greatest strategic challenge.
They didn't mince words. Let's flash some hard data dashboards on screen for rapid revision. I'll read out the stats.
Go for it.
Japan's defense budget is doubling from its historic 1% cap to 2% of GDP over 5 years. That is $315 billion in spending, a 56% increase.
One of the fastest military buildups in modern history.
And for the 2025 budget alone, it increased by 9.4% to a record 8.7 trillion yen, or $55.1 billion.
So what are they buying with that? Counterstrike capabilities. In January 2024, they signed a deal for 400 U.S. Tomahawk cruise missiles.
Wait, Tomahawks? Those are offensive deep strike weapons.
Exactly. They aren't just defending anymore. They have the capability to hit launch pads inside enemy territory. They're also mass-producing domestic Type 12 surface-to-ship missiles and researching hypersonics.
And they are easing their self-imposed ban on lethal weapons exports, right?
Yeah, they ship Patriot missiles to the U.S. They're building a 6th-gen stealth fighter called Tempest with the UK and Italy.
But the breakthrough for India happened in August 2025, the agreement on Unicorn Masts.
A total game changer.
Explain this, because it's a huge deal for our exam prep folks.
A Unicorn Mast is a highly advanced, stealthy radar system that integrates all sensors into one horn-like structure on a warship, drastically reducing its radar signature.
But the tech isn't even the biggest news. It's the co-production.
Right. It's being co-developed and co-produced by FOIP Electronics Limited, or BEL, and Japanese firms. It is the very first case of co-production of defense equipment between India and Japan.
So if Japan is shifting from a U.S. protectorate to building its own joint operations command, how does that impact the broader Asian security architecture, specifically for India's strategic autonomy?
It's a massive geopolitical advantage for India. A militarily strong Japan building a stable Asian equilibrium directly contributes to India's ultimate goal, a multipolar Asia in a multipolar world.
So Japan is becoming the counterweight India needs against a unipolar, China-dominated Asia.
Exactly. And Japan's diplomatic postures reflect this new assertiveness. Look at their reconciliation with South Korea, overcoming bitter occupation disputes from 1910 to 1945.
Just to facilitate a U.S.-led regional security network. Right?
Yes. And look at their stance on Ukraine. Japan provided massive aid to Ukraine. PM Kishida warned, and this is a quote you should memorize, Ukraine could be the future of Asia.
Meaning, if territorial sovereignty falls in Europe, Taiwan or the South China Sea could be next.
Precisely. And looking to the future trajectory, the August 2025 joint vision for the next decade covers 8 pillars.
Right, and they're expanding into some highly niche next-gen cooperation areas.
Cyber defense, space situational awareness for tracking space debris, military medicine, and chemical, biological, and radiological defense, CPR defense.
Okay, we have covered immense ground. Let's shift into strict exam preparation mode. We need to convert this strategic briefing into your answer writing structure.
Let's build the framework.
On your visual dashboard, pull up a clean, high-contrast, 250-word structure flow graphic. Walk us through it.
Okay, for your intro flow, start with the evolution. Contrast the decades of pacifism with the 2022 NSS and the 2025 Joint Declaration. Establish the momentum.
Then body paragraph 1, geoeconomics.
Right. Cite JAICI, the $75 billion FOIP pledge, and the resilient supply chains for semiconductors and critical minerals.
Then body paragraph 2, security and defense.
This is your hard data paragraph. The 2% GDP shift, the 400 Tomahawks, the ACSA enhancement, and crucially, the Unicorn Masts co-production by BEL.
And body paragraph 3 is geopolitics.
Managing the China threat. Discuss Quad synergy and how the IPOI and FOIP are actively integrating.
Finally, the conclusion flow.
Tie it all back to the grand strategy. A remilitarized Japan secures a multipolar Asia in a multipolar world.
That is your 250-word framework. Lock it in. Now, we are doing a rapid revision recap. I'm going to fire a sequence of active recall questions at you. I'll pause briefly, try to mentally answer before the expert does.
Let's do it.
First, what year was the Act East Forum established, serving as the bridge to Japan's FOIP?
2017.
Second, which Indian firm is co-producing Unicorn Masts with Japan as of 2025?
BEL, FOIP Electronics Limited.
Third, What are the four pillars of Kishida's 2023 FOIP policy?
Maintaining peace, addressing global challenges in the Indo-Pacific, multi-layered connectivity, and ensuring safe, open skies and seas.
And last one, where are India's two maritime domain awareness centers located?
Gurugram, Haryana.
Beautiful. If you hit those, your retention is solid. Let's do a 30-second final revision capsule to reconnect the concept web.
It flows like this. Economic resilience, meaning semiconductor supply chains, requires military logistics, which is the ACSA agreement. That logistics relies on strategic deterrence and tomahawks in the Quad, which ultimately creates multipolarity.
Geopolitics to economy to security to domestic impact. So what does this all mean for you? We always end with a provocative thought to mull over.
And this one is a deep strategic paradox.
If Japan's easing of lethal weapons exports allows it to become the arsenal of democracy in the Indo-Pacific, how long until we see Japanese defense tech become as ubiquitous in Indian military architecture as Russian hardware used to be?
And the follow-up to that, what does that mean for the concept of Atmanirbhar Bharat? Can you be truly self-reliant if your critical radar tech is co-produced in Tokyo?
That is the tension you need to analyze going forward. You have the framework, you have the visual map, and you have the data. Use it. This concludes the deep dive.